November 8, 1965. Manhattan. Inside a 5-story townhouse on East 68th Street, a maid makes a shocking discovery. Dorothy Kilgallen, one of the most famous journalists in America, is found lifeless in bed. She is fully dressed, her makeup and wig still in place, a book propped by her side. Police quickly call it an accident. They say she mixed alcohol with barbiturates, slipped away in her sleep, and that was the end of it. Case closed. But it wasn't that simple. Dorothy was at the height of her career, working on the biggest story of her life. And the details of her death, the room she was found in, the condition of her body, the gaps in the timeline, none of it makes sense. To understand the truth, we need to step inside Dorothy's home, peel back the public image, and look at the private world that few ever saw. Because it's inside those walls that the real story begins. Dorothy Kilgallen wasn't just another columnist. She was a media empire in one person. Born in Chicago in 1913, she grew up in New York City, the daughter of a journalist. By her 20s, Dorothy had carved out her own path in the world of newspapers. She wasn't content to write fluff pieces. She covered major trials, politics, and world events. Her syndicated column, The Voice of Broadway, reached up to 20 million readers across the country. Dorothy's sharp wit and sharp pen made her both admired and feared. She had a knack for mixing celebrity gossip with political intrigue, weaving together the glamorous and the dangerous. By the 1950s, she was a household name thanks to the television quiz show What's My Line? Millions of viewers tuned in to watch Dorothy trade clever quips with fellow panelists. She seemed untouchable, polished, powerful, and at the very top of her game. But Dorothy wasn't just a gossip columnist or a TV star. She was also a serious investigative reporter. She had interviewed notorious criminals, dug into government corruption, and by the early 1960s, she had turned her sights on the most explosive story of the decade, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Dorothy was one of the few journalists to gain a private interview with Jack Ruby, the man who shot Lee Harvey Oswald. She told friends she had uncovered shocking information, and that she was preparing a book that would reveal the truth about the assassination. Dorothy Kilgallen was bold, relentless, and fearless, but she was also playing with fire. For all of Dorothy's professional success, her personal life was far less glamorous. She lived with her husband, Richard Colmar, in their brownstone townhouse on Manhattan's East 68th Street. To the outside world, they looked like a picture-perfect couple. Richard was once a Broadway actor and co-host of a popular radio show. Together, they seemed like the embodiment of New York success. But by the 1960s, Richard's career had collapsed. He was drinking heavily, drifting into obscurity, and becoming increasingly bitter. Friends described him as jealous of Dorothy's fame, resentful of living in her shadow. The marriage, once admired, was now strained. Both Dorothy and Richard were rumored to have had affairs. They lived together, but not always happily. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere in the townhouse was cold and distant. Dorothy's friends often noticed the contrast. On television, she was lively, witty, and full of energy. At home, she seemed weighed down, burdened by a husband who no longer supported her in a marriage that was quietly crumbling. November 7th, 1965. Dorothy attended a party at the Regency Hotel in Manhattan. She mingled with friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. To those around her, she seemed upbeat, sharp, and full of her usual spark. But when the evening ended, something strange happened. Dorothy didn't leave with her husband. Instead, she left with a man who has never been identified. Witnesses recalled seeing her with him, but his name was never released, and his identity remains one of the great mysteries of the case. What did Dorothy discuss with this man? Where did they go? And why has his name been hidden for nearly 60 years? Sometime after that, Dorothy returned to her townhouse. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, Dorothy was found dead. The family maid discovered her body, but the details were disturbing. Dorothy was lying in a bedroom she almost never used. She was still wearing her makeup, her false eyelashes, and her wig. A book rested beside her, yet it wasn't the mystery novel she had been reading at the time. It was a book she had already finished long before. The scene didn't add up. It looked staged. The official ruling came swiftly, accidental overdose. Dorothy had combined alcohol and barbiturates, and her body simply gave out. But those who knew her best disagreed. They said Dorothy was careful with medication. She hated pills and rarely used them. To her friends, the overdose explanation felt like a cover story. If Dorothy Kilgallen's death was suspicious, you wouldn't have known it from the way it were handled. Police never treated the townhouse like a crime scene. They didn't search for signs of forced entry. They didn't question everyone in the home thoroughly. They didn't pursue the identity of the man Dorothy left the party with. Even stranger was a reaction of her husband, Richard. For a man who had just lost his wife, Richard showed little visible grief. He didn't demand answers. He didn't call for a deeper investigation. He seemed oddly detached, almost indifferent. Meanwhile, Dorothy's notes, especially those related to her work on the Kennedy assassination, disappeared. Files, drafts, and research she had told friends about were nowhere to be found. Was it theft? Or did someone inside the house remove them before police arrived? The investigation was sloppy, rushed, and incomplete. And for a woman as prominent as Dorothy, the lack of scrutiny raised red flags. So what really happened that night inside the Kilgallen home? The first theory is the simplest: accident. Dorothy could have miscalculated the effects of alcohol and medication, slipped away in her sleep, and been discovered in a tragic but ordinary way. The second theory points to her personal life. Was her marriage so broken that someone close to her had a motive to silence her? Did Richard know more than he admitted? And then there's the darkest theory of all, that Dorothy Kilgallen was silenced by people far more powerful than her husband. That her death was no accident, but a deliberate act to stop her from publishing what she knew about the Kennedy assassination. Whichever theory you believe, one thing is clear. The official story doesn't explain the inconsistencies, and the silence of those in her home that night only deepens a mystery. Dorothy Kilgallen was a woman who knew too much. She was fearless, outspoken, and chasing a story that could have shaken the nation. Her sudden death inside her own home raises too many questions to ignore. Was she simply a victim of her own lifestyle? Or was she silenced because of what she was about to reveal? And then, of course, there's the most haunting question of all, the unidentified man she was last seen with. Who was he? Where did he go? And what did he know about Dorothy's final hours? In our next episode, we follow the trail of that mystery man, the last companion Dorothy Kilgallen was seen with, the man who may have walked her into the night and into her death.